All right, I want to go through your photo assignment 2. I want to look at the camera settings for that. Remember, we're working with shutter settings and freezing motion. So on our basic setup here, sometimes what I like to do is go to the auto setting on the dial here, the green auto setting. And if I push my shutter halfway down and let it autofocus, you should be able to see in the display there that it is at an f4.2 at 1/60th of a second, 1/60th being right there, and the f4.2 right there. So I like to use that kind of as a starting point when I shoot photos, and this varies room by room or going from inside to outside. That's why I put it on auto and check the settings there. And again, you see my display disappeared there after a little bit. If I hit this plus minus button right by my finger, it'll bring that display back up. Now f4.2, if you remember, the aperture, the lower the number, the more light it lets into the camera and the brighter your photos will be. So what I want to do is leave that at a 4.2. These cameras don't go down a lot lower than that. But you can see we have a 1/30th of a second there. So if I want to shoot an object in motion, let's say somebody's dribbling a basketball, I could shoot it at 1/30th of a second, but it's probably going to blur. That's a pretty slow shutter speed. Typically for sports activities, you might start at somewhere around 1/400th of a second. So 1/30th would work out if we wanted to intentionally blur a photo of somebody dribbling a basketball. Then, if we want to change that, now I'm going to go to a manual mode now, so I have control of my aperture and shutter speeds here. I'm going to change that shutter speed up to 1/400th of a second and try it there. And you can mess around with the settings. You don't have to try one and hey, it didn't work or it did work and move on. If you need to shoot multiple photos to get it right, go ahead. So 1/500th of a second would be a good one to try for a high-speed shutter. Now, you don't want to go too high because the higher you go, the darker the photos tend to be. If the shutter speed's really fast, remember it's blocking light out of the camera, and the faster that opens and closes, the less light that's being let into the camera. So there is an effect when you go up too high. Now there are things we can do to offset that by changing the aperture and changing a setting called ISO to kind of offset those things. And one thing you'll find, folks, is with any camera, if you try to shoot sporting activities or anything that's moving fast with the auto mode, they usually don't do a very good job of freezing the action. They take nice general photos. I use it all the time for general photos, but when it comes to motion, high-speed motion, the auto settings just don't seem to cut it. All right, so with your assignment now, you're going to take, let's say somebody's dribbling a basketball. You want to have one shot where you're freezing the ball perfectly, and then one shot where you have a blurred ball. Make sure that in the case of like a dribbling basketball that you don't snap the shot when the ball's up by their hand or down by the floor, because remember the ball has to stop before it changes directions. So you want to catch that ball mid-flight. We also have in class, we have a fan, a box fan that you could turn on and practice with the shutter speed and try to freeze the blades perfectly. You can freeze some very fast motion with these cameras. They go up to like 1/4000th of a second. Another important thing I wanted to point out for this first shutter assignment is that you want to make sure you're shooting the same shot twice. If you're shooting a shot of somebody throwing a football, shoot one with a slow shutter speed, but you want the same person throwing the same kind of pass to freeze the ball. Okay, so don't use two completely different football motions, like somebody punting and then somebody throwing, or even somebody different throwing it. You want to probably use the same person throwing it at the same general speed to try to do this assignment correctly. So you're going to shoot pairs of photos. You may shoot 4 photos of a particular activity. Maybe somebody's throwing a football and you try 4 different shutter speeds. That's fine as well, but you need a minimum of 2 shots of that activity to get a fair comparison of these shutter speeds. All right, with that you should have enough information to get started with this project. Good luck.